Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are breaking down a very specific, incredibly passionate Christian apologetic argument drawn directly from our source texts. This is a message geared specifically toward atheists and skeptics, and it dives headfirst into some of the absolute biggest questions of human existence. We're talking about human nature, where evil actually came from, and this massive concept of redemption. And what's really fascinating is that the sources don't just hand us a bunch of dry, abstract theology. Instead, they present this deeply personal narrative about an all-out internal war happening inside every single one of us, followed by a dramatic rescue operation initiated by a loving God. So let's jump right in and see exactly how they build this argument. Right out of the gate, the source material tries to hook the skeptic's intellect with a pretty brilliant rhetorical question. Can sweet water and bitter water come from the exact same well? Think about it. Can a single tree produce both sweet, delicious fruit and bitter, poisonous fruit? The texts are using this analogy to push back hard against a really common objection. They're challenging the idea that a good God intentionally created both good and evil inside human beings. By asking this, the author is basically saying, hey, let's reconsider where our darkest impulses actually come from. If God is the source of the sweet water, the good stuff, then where in the world is all this bitter water coming from? Well, here is how the sources answer that. Instead of blaming the creator for the bitter water, they lay out a core foundational premise. Humanity was originally created entirely good. We were equipped with complete free will and made in the image of the Creator. But, as we all know, we didn't exactly stay that way. The argument here is that we actually inherited a corrupt, evil nature. How? By willingly choosing to believe the deceptions of the devil. The sources argue that humanity rebelled. We aligned ourselves with evil, and by doing so, we effectively inherited the negative traits of the very force we chose to follow. This absolute turning point is universally known in theology as the fall. According to the texts, when humans ate the forbidden fruit, when they made that ultimate choice to trust the devil over God, they didn't just break a rule. It was way bigger than that. They fundamentally rewired their own nature. They distanced themselves from their creator, surrendered to this destructive control, and literally became, as the text says, partakers of the devil's qualities. This is pinpointed as the exact moment that sickness, sin, and all those twisted inner tendencies crashed into the human experience. It wasn't a design flaw by God. It was a tragic inheritance from a devastating choice. And the psychological aftermath of that choice is absolutely crucial to this argument. The sources argue this creates a deeply fractured, almost split human psychology. We now have two completely different dimensions at war within our own hearts. On one side, there's this genuine, beautiful desire to live, to love, to just do the right thing, which is a remnant of our original good design. But the grim reality is that the other side is constantly lurking, looking for even the smallest excuse to burst out, behave recklessly, and cause harm. It's this exhausting tug-of-war between how we were designed and what we inherited. To emphasize just how intensely relatable this internal struggle is, the commentaries point straight to the ancient writings of the Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 7. He wrote this incredibly raw admission: "That which I am doing, I do not understand. For I am not practicing what I would like to do, but I am doing the very thing I hate." I mean, who hasn't felt that? Have you ever desperately wanted to break a bad habit, but you just end up doing it again and again? The texts argue that this isn't just you lacking willpower. It is actual living proof of this inherited, divided nature at war inside of you. The academic journals in our sources take this a step further, explaining that this internal war isn't just about slipping up and making an occasional mistake. It's baked into us. Our very embodied personalities, our reflexes, our everyday habits have become fundamentally wired against doing good. Because we live in a fallen world, taking the selfish a wrong way out has basically become the easy automatic response. What that means is, to actually obey God and do good, we have to actively and consciously fight our own inherited nature every single day. Which brings us to the divine ransom. Having established this pretty grim picture of our internal conflict, the apologetic argument pivots right into the solution. But there's a massive roadblock first. The sources point out a profound legal and moral dilemma blocking our rescue. God is perfectly just. Because humanity willingly surrendered to the devil and rebelled against the Creator's design, divine justice absolutely requires a consequence. Think about it. If the devil deserves punishment for his rebellion, then logically, humanity also deserves punishment for joining his side. God can't just sweep it under the rug and ignore justice. Doing so would compromise his very nature. Justice demands a real consequence for sin. And this dilemma right here brilliantly sets up the core of the Christian gospel as presented in these texts. To satisfy that strict justice without completely destroying humanity, a rescue mechanism is deployed. You see, God desperately wants to free his children. But since the law requires an atonement, a payment for sin, someone has to cover that massive debt. The stunning plot twist of the argument is that God himself steps in. He literally provides and pays his own ransom. Humanity didn't earn it or find it. God just provided it to legally buy us back from the enemy's claim. It completely satisfies justice while unleashing an unimaginable level of mercy. Now we move to being transformed by fatherly love. The sources make a really critical distinction here. This rescue isn't just some cold, clinical, legal transaction. The primary source text uses this incredibly powerful phrase to capture the whole vibe of this rescue: I surrender only for love. The argument is that true, lasting obedience can never be forced out of someone by slamming them with rules or threats of punishment. It just doesn't work. Instead, it is the overwhelming, radical fatherly love of Christ, demonstrated by paying that ultimate ransom, that actually draws a person in. It's this specific, undeniable love that melts the human heart and inspires a genuine, completely willing surrender. And the commentaries note that when a person finally yields to this profound love, something practically miraculous happens. They are actually given a completely new nature. Remember that bitter water well we talked about at the beginning? Well, this new nature empowers the individual to naturally overcome those dark impulses. Because they've surrendered to this transformative fatherly love, the believer actually begins to genuinely hate the sin that used to control them. They start to naturally love and choose righteousness. The tide of that internal war finally starts to turn. Our sources break down this spiritual growth into a very clear three-step theological progression. Step 1 is justification. This is where God kicks things off, taking the total initiative to legally redeem and rescue us. Step 2 is sanctification. This is the day-in, day-out grind, where God continues his work in us, molding our character and actually giving us the power to crush those old habits. And finally, step 3 is glorification, the absolute promise that God will eventually complete this transformation entirely. The texts make a huge point of this. God isn't in the business of half-finished projects. What he starts, he finishes. Finally, we look at a fruitful, steadfast life. Because the ultimate goal of all this transformation isn't just to hold some abstract theological beliefs in your head. It requires tangible action. There's this fantastic excerpt detailing a prayer from the book of Philippians. It explains that as this divine love grows in someone's life, they develop this incredible, deep discernment and a totally sincere character. The source shares this super interesting historical detail. In ancient times, people would hold fine pottery up to the sunlight to make sure the seller hadn't hidden any cracks with wax. In the exact same way, a transformed life is one of pure sincerity. It's tested by the sunlight. It has no wax of hypocrisy. It allows believers to face the world's absolute worst challenges with a genuine, unshakable, Christ-like character. To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with one final, deeply introspective thought drawn straight from our sources. The text quotes this absolutely beautiful definition of a saint. It says, "A saint is a person who makes it easy to believe in Jesus." Think about that for a second. If this profound rescue, this massive payment of the ransom, and this total rewiring of our divided nature has truly happened, then a person's everyday life should absolutely reflect it. So the ultimate question the text leaves us with is this: when people look at your life, your actions, and the way you love, do they naturally think about God? It is an incredibly powerful challenge. Thank you so much for hanging out with me as we unpacked these sources. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.